All right. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Letters from Camp. This month, I am pleased to be joined by Jim Ganley. Jim, how are you tonight?
I'm great. How are you?
Fantastic. So, we always like to start off with kind of getting your camp story. I know for you that involves some different camps besides just Winoxet, but if you can kind of take us through what camps you went to as a camper, where you worked, what areas you worked in, that type of thing, kind of take us through your camp journey.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a relative newcomer to the Camp Lenoxet world. I did my years as a camper at Camp Collier in Gardner for about 5 years as a camper, and then I spent 2 years on staff there. First as handicraft, and then later in scoutcraft. And then when Camp Collier closed in 1990 after the 1992 season. Um, I went looking around for other camps that were still trying to hire staff late in the season. This was about July of 1993, and I found Camp Resolute out in Bolton still needed help. So I joined their staff as a scoutcraft staff for the '93 season, and then I went on to be the scoutcraft director there in 1994, and then I was the program director for 1995, 96, and 98. So, um, and then I thought my time at camp was over, and I finished college and moved back to Central Mass, got a job, do all those things that adults do, and then uh, got involved with the council, got back engaged with my old troop, started doing some other stuff, working with the OA, that kind of stuff. In 1999, Camp Lenoxet opened its high cope course, and Mark Smith was looking around for people to be instructors and to help out with that program. So I went to camp school and I became a cope instructor, and got involved doing cope programs in sort of the fall and spring timeframe. Uh, and then that went on for a few years. I served in a couple of other positions with the council. And then in the spring of 2002, the company I was working for decided to lay off most of their workers, including me. And so I found myself in the spring unemployed, and coincidentally, Jeff D was the camp director at the time, and he still needed a cope director. So it was a little serendipitous, and so I ended up being the adventure team director for the 2002 season, and then I went back again in 2003 as the CIT director.
All right. And so you've you've been involved, as you said, with the troop, and now as a crew advisor on the local level. You've been involved in the council level as a board member, as council president, and even on the national level, serving on different task force and running things at national jamborees. So, what have been kind of some of your kind of pinnacles along that journey on kind of some of those different levels?
The it's been a lot, too many to probably too many different jobs to list. But I can tell you, among the best jobs I've ever had have been my time is spent as a crew advisor. We've had a great group of youth come through our crew, and we've had a lot of fun over the years. Um, the years I spent as the lodge advisor for Grand Monadnock Lodge, and then later as a section advisor for Section 91B. And all three of those jobs kind of share a similar quality in that I get to work with some fantastic youth, and I get to watch them develop their leadership skills and grow and problem solve and work together, and that's always a lot of fun. And I've carried that on into some work with the National Order of the Arrow Communications Committee, and some of the work I've done with the Jamboree for a lot of the same reasons, because I love working with those up and coming youth leaders. It's a lot of fun, and helps keep me young. So.
Now you mentioned that when they kind of opened the high cope course, that's when you kind of got involved in cope. Did that kind of start this cope and climbing journey for you that kind of took you all the way to the National Jamboree running the climbing area, or was that an interest you had beforehand?
No, it actually, Climbing and ropes courses and things like that were not something my troop did when I was growing up. I think cope was sort of developing in the 80s as a scouting activity, and it was not something our troop was into. So it wasn't until Mark recruited me to get involved with cope at Wanaxit that I kind of dove. That was my first exposure to that world, and I kind of jumped into it, and it's a lot of fun. And when I served on the camp staff as the adventure team director, I went back to school to camp school for climbing, and that was kind of the beginning of that journey, that part of my scouting journey, as I got involved with those kind of programs and working with the National Cope and Climbing Subcommittee and teaching at camp school, and now, as you said. In 2023, I was the director for climbing for the National Jamboree, and I'll be doing that again in 2026 for the National Jamboree. So it's a lot of fun. I love COPE for it being such a versatile program and something that's almost infinitely adaptable to leadership development and problem solving, and again, getting to watch some of these young people really work through some problems and build up their teams and get to work together. And it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, no, great. Now, so for those who don't know, there have been a lot of these history posts on social media, so documenting kind of the history of Camp Wanaxit. You've been behind a lot of that. I know you've worked with a couple other people, but you've been kind of the main person leading that charge. What are some of the most interesting things you've learned as you've kind of been compiling all this history and writing about it?
Yeah, towards the end of last summer, when we were talking about what kinds of things were going to be part of this 100th anniversary celebration, I had this idea of a year-long series of social media posts to kind of tell the Camp Wanaxit story. And the original plan was to post twice a week for a total of 100 posts over the course of the year. We haven't quite hit that goal yet. Life has gotten in the way for a few weeks, but what we have been able to tell, I think, is a really interesting story. It's been a lot of fun to deep dive the history of Camp Wanaxit and sort of peripherally the history of Dublin, New Hampshire, and Monadnock region, and that kind of stuff. Because I didn't grow up in the Camp Wanaxit community and family. I didn't get a lot of these stories, or at least the backstories to it. So it's been really interesting to hear or to learn more about, like, all these names that you hear people mention and that we see on plaques around camp, and say, who is Ted Boudelier, who is George Jaquier, who is today's post was about Arthur Polanski. So that's been cool to learn the sort of backstory there, and just to explore the roots of the camp, and the growth and development of this piece of property that we've all come to love, and see where it's been, and hopefully where it's going.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even having been there for a couple of decades, you hear the names, but before the history post, I did not realize Ted Boutlier was a scouting professional, or the length of time. I knew George Traquair was there for a long time, but just how long or what kind of he led the charge on was interesting. And even Arthur Polanski, we had the Patrol Award for several years. I knew he was a nature director, but didn't know he went to MIT, which I learned, from the history post. So really, really interesting stuff. And I can't wait to keep reading about, the more modern times as well, as you kind of get through the year.
Yeah, and the plan is, once we're sort of past this year, we're going to hopefully take all of these photos that we've collected, and it's I mean, there's a lot more. The challenge has been trying to fit this story into the character limit of social media, right? So what we'd like to do is take all of these photos and news clippings and contemporary documents and things like that we found, that and collect it all into a website that'll sort of tell the story of Wanaxit for the first 100 years, and that we can build on and keep hopefully updated going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a final plug for our event on Saturday. We'll have some history stuff there as well, kind of a museum which will be set up and then kind of in the boathouse for the summer. So if whether you're heading to camp for the 100th celebration on Saturday, or just will be there at any point during the summer with your unit, that will be there as well for people to check out, which is great.
Yeah, it looks like we're going to have a great turnout on Saturday.
Yeah. All right, so let's move into our lightning round.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. So number one, your favorite camp song.
My favorite camp song is Our Paddles. I've always been a big fan of those slower kind of wind down songs.
How about your favorite camp skit?
So 100 years ago at Camp Resolute, my brother and I used to perform A Suitor Comes to Call, and I haven't seen it done in a lot of years, but it had the two people with the pots and pans as hats switching back and forth roles, and that was always a lot of fun to do.
Absolutely. And your favorite camp meal?
You know, you told me this question was coming, and I don't eat meals at camp often enough to have a favorite meal. I think I don't know the menu well enough, but I'll tell you, I did have a fantastic pork roast dinner there just the other night. So the
We'll count it.
people coming to this summer, I think are in for good food.
How about your favorite place in camp? And feel free to mention places in other camps as well if you'd like.
So I think of the camps that I've spent a lot of time in, I think my favorite place is a place called Sheldrick's Point out at Camp Collier, um, which is just a nice, quiet, peaceful spot out on the lake. And I think for Winoxet, I don't want to sound trite, but I think Chapel Point for a lot of the same reasons, just because it's a nice, quiet, peaceful spot, especially when there's nobody around or in the off season.
Mm-hmm. Anyone who was particularly influential to you kind of when you were coming up, maybe someone who served as a role model or mentor when you were younger that you'd like to kind of shout out?
Yeah, I came up with three people, and that were sort of I think really I'll credit for how I got where I am today in my scouting journey. Um, there's a guy named Steve Rockwood who's active with the troop committees for Troop 6 in Gardner for many years. And way back in the dark ages, when I was being interviewed for Brotherhood in the Order of the Arrow, Steve made an offhand suggestion that, hey, you should think about running for a lodge office. And it was just kind of a casual suggestion. So I did. I took the suggestion. I ran for a lodge office. That led to a whole bunch of other things. And my eventual, my ultimate love of the Order of the Arrow and my involvement with the Order of the Arrow at all different levels. The second person is a guy named John Fortini, who was the assistant director at Camp Resolute, who was kind enough to give a displaced staffer from Collier a job at Camp Resolute in 1993. I think if he hadn't welcomed me in and made me feel like a part of that staff, probably my time on camp staff would have been a whole lot shorter. And then finally, Mark Smith, who I think has influenced a lot of people in the old Nashua Valley Council and Grand Monadnock Lodge. He really got me engaged with Nashua Valley, with Grand Monadnock Lodge, with Camp Winoxet, and with COPE. So I think if not for the three of those folks, I think my scouting journey would have looked a whole lot different.
Yeah, on your first one, that point of I think sometimes adults lose sight of how much that little suggestion can go a long way with why don't you run for something or have you thought about this leadership position or things like that, and that can really kind of set someone on a path.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we can take that for granted, definitely. Any kind of final closing thoughts or comments?
I think I've spent most of my adult life active in scouting, or really most of my life active in scouting. And I think I hope that all of our current staff, I got a chance to talk to the current staff the other night, and one of the things I told them was that, all of this legacy, all of this history that we've been talking about is, now their responsibility to carry forward. And I think they're going to do a great job doing that this summer, and I look forward to seeing where scouting goes. There's been a lot of changes in recent years, and I'm anxious to see where this movement that so many of us love is headed and where it goes in the next few years.
Great. Well, thank you very much for being my guest this month. And
Absolutely.
again, we hope that all of you come out on Saturday and help us celebrate the 100th anniversary. It's going to be a great day, a lot of program, a lot of fellowship, and a lot of seeing people maybe we haven't seen in a few years. So that'll be great. And look forward to all the rest of the celebrations, celebrating the 100th anniversary. And make sure to tune in next month for our next episode of Letters from Camp.
All right. See you on Saturday.
Thank you, Jim.